One of the questions that I get almost every day, sometimes they come to me through my own personal website, and sometimes they come through the mailbag, are questions about writing and questions about breaking in to the publishing business, and especially breaking into the publishing business if you happen to not be woke, if you happen to be a conservative trying to do good work. And this is one of the reasons, it's always very painful for me. It really is painful for me to promote myself and promote my work, but it was one of the reasons I beg you to go out and pre-order my book, A Strange Habit of Mind, because if we don't have support for this, there's not going to be any conservatives in publishing. There is a movement to keep people who are not woke out of the publishing business, and there is not a lot of pushback against this because conservatives historically have not been in the publishing business for the last 20 or 30 years. So it's been really, it's going to get really, really tough out there. But the letters that I get are interesting. One of the things that I get a lot is people asking me to read or comment on their stuff, and I simply can't do it. There are legal reasons why I can't do it. It leaves me open to stealing something if I write something that the writer then thinks is similar to theirs. But also it's just time. I get asked literally so many times during the course of a week that if I did it, I would have no spare time at all. I have precious little spare time as it is. I like to spend that spare time chasing my wife around the house, and I'm not going to take time out to read your stuff, even though I would love to help. I would love to help, but I'm not going to take time out from my life, which has so little spare time in it. And really asking people to do that, it's something that most writers who have made a living get all the time, and it's just something they can't do. They can't really look at it, even if they think it's a great idea, even if they think you're talented. So the question of how you break in, I think there are certain things that I think you should begin with right away. First of all, if you don't read, you're probably not a writer. If you don't read books, you're probably not a writer. And if you don't read the kind of books you want to write, you're probably not going to do a good job at writing those books. We spoke to Jack Carr, who wrote The Terminal List, and he talked about how he grew up reading Tom Clancy, reading the great spy writers who informed his knowledge of how to put those stories together. It was just there in his head when he sat down to write his books. And I think that that's true of me too. I grew up reading, Raymond Chandler. I grew up reading Dashiell Hammett. I loved those books. I wanted to be not just those writers, I wanted to be those detectives. And so it really fed into the way I told stories. So if you're not reading, you're not going to be a writer. Stop worrying about it. People, the one letter I get that, I won't say it annoys me, but I kind of roll my eyes, is when somebody says, I have a great story, but I don't know how to write. Would you write the story for me? And it's like, no. One of the reasons I became a writer is because I have stories to tell. I wouldn't do what I do because it's a very hard profession if I didn't have stories that I felt needed to be told, that I needed to tell. And so if you don't have stories or you don't think you can write, then do something else. It's hard to do, and do it for fun if you want, but don't expect it to go anywhere or to be published. And the other thing, and really important, is if you are a reader, and if you do read stuff that you like and you think you can write something like the stuff that you read, and you're reading it and you're thinking, I can do this. The other thing is, have you learned grammar? And there are two ways to know whether you've learned grammar. One, if you had a teacher in junior high school or high school whom you hated, who taught you grammar, as I did, you probably know some grammar. But if you don't, you should study it. It only takes one book, learning grammar, and do the exercises and read it from start to finish. Because a writer who does not know grammar, there's nobody who's going to fix that for you. The editors, there used to be editors who would fix your grammar, but nobody's going to publish you if you have grammatical errors, a lot of grammatical errors in your writing. And sometimes I get letters that start with a sentence, will you read my book, that has a grammatical error in it. Nobody's going to read your book, nobody at all. It is like being a carpenter who doesn't know which end of a hammer is the business end of the hammer, want to be a writer but not know grammar. It is that basic. I feel stupid saying it to people, but I cannot tell you how many people write me letters saying they want to be a writer, but they don't know grammar. So grammar, learn grammar, and also you should be reading everything in your genre, but really you should be reading everything and learning from what you read and reading it with that kind of mind. Now here's one more thing that I think is really important. There are a lot of writers who make a fortune, an absolute fortune, who write crap. And when I say it's crap, I mean it's just badly constructed, it's badly thought, it's not realistic, and people like it, but it's crap. I have no idea how to do that. I was never interested in it. I wouldn't be interested in it today. If you told me I could write something that was crap that would sell 1 billion copies, I wouldn't do it. I'm not interested. Life is short. I love what I do. I love writing. I want my writing to be excellent. I started out with my desire to be excellent to the point of great. And sometimes I have achieved that excellence into the point of great. And if the book is great and it doesn't sell, I can live with that much easier, much more easily than I can live with a book that it stinks but sells 1 zillion copies. I'm just not interested. So if that's the advice you're looking for, I'm not the guy. I am here to tell you how to be excellent. So then the next question is, you sit down and you write a book and your friends tell you it's good, and maybe your friends actually read the kind of things that you're writing and you think this is a good book. Now, where do you go? Where do you go? Well, first of all, there is a system for this. And if you're not doing it, when I started out, I had no idea how to do this. I had a novel in a box, and so help me, I went to agents' offices and I knocked on the door and I said, I have a novel, would you read my novel? I was literally physically thrown out of offices and buildings. People would grab me by the elbow and say, this is not how this is done, and they would hurl me out the door. But at least I had the gumption to do it. But there are plenty of books that tell you how to do this. Writer's Market will tell you how to do it. Plenty of websites where you can find out how to write a query letter, who will read the books that you read, what are the lists of publishers and agents who will read submissions. Mostly, you still want to go to an agent. If you're not going to self-publish, you still want to go to an agent who will get you a better deal. You don't know what you're doing when it comes to negotiating. Agents do know what they're doing. They know who the editors are. They know who the editors are who will like something. They know where the publishers are who will publish something. You want to get them. And you write to an agent in a very specific way that I'm not going to describe. It's very short. You tell them who you are, what you've done, why you're the right person, what the book is about, and you write it in a way that shows that you can write. So you might want to write an opening paragraph. Like I said, I don't want to go into the whole thing, but you can read it in Writer's Market. Any guide will tell you how to do that. There's no point writing to someone, asking them how to do it, because there's lots of lists on how to do it. If you can get an agent, the agent will handle everything from there. Most of them charge between 10 and 15%. That's pretty much standard now. It used to just be 10%, but now it's 15%. It's worth it. It is worth having an agent to get you into the publishing world. If the next question I always get is about being a conservative. Is there hostility toward conservatives? Yes. Yes, there is. How do you find the agents who will read a book that is by a conservative? Simple. If you're reading the kind of books you want to write, and you should be, and you come upon somebody, and there are plenty of people who are writing, Brad Thor, a great conservative writer, Jack Carr, I think, tends toward the conservative. I don't know his politics per se, but I think he seems to be on that side. But if you go and look at them, and you look at the acknowledgments page, almost all authors in their acknowledgments will thank their agents. So that's where you start. That's how you start to know who the agents are who will look at something in the conservative line. And that's how you start to find out where the editors are who will look at something in the conservative line. Go to a writer who writes the kind of thing you like, who you think might be a conservative or you think might have at least a non-woke point of view. Look in the acknowledgments page, find where he thanks the agent, and that's where you start your queries. It is very hostile out there. And another time I'll talk about self-publishing and whether it's worth doing it. But there are still people who will publish this sort of thing. There are still editors who are interested in it. They know it sells. They know there's an audience for it. You just have to be able to do it well and find those agents who can find those editors that you need. And I think that is a pretty good summation of the kind of advice that I give starting writers who want to write good stuff and want to sell it in the real world to big publishers. And whether or not they can do it, will depend on how they proceed and whether or not they sound good when they do it. Wasn't that great? Of course it was. You want more, so like and subscribe to the Andrew Klavan Podcast.